Okay, well, let's start the meeting then. Let's see, it's 6:33 and we're going to call the meeting to order. And let's see, we can have public comment first. Does anybody have any public comment?
Hi, everybody. I'll just introduce myself
Yes,
quickly. My name is Javier. I'm an architect here in Los Angeles, and I serve on the board of LAPA in the Arts District, and was intrigued by your agenda, so I'm here just to listen in.
wonderful. That's right, we should introduce ourselves. So that was great, Javier. Thank you so much. RFRM, that's an architectural collective?
That is correct. That is my architectural practice. We strive to provide a collective environment and are working towards maybe creating a legal structure of some sort of collective, but still kind of in the ideation stage.
So you're talking about like you're in the Walter Gropius stage or something?
That's right. You're at least we have other studios within our space that we collaborate with at this point.
Well, that's terrific. That's terrific. Okay, Ron, you want to introduce yourself? I'm just going to
Sure.
go
My
ahead.
name's Ron. I'm retired from staffing programs that accepted charitable gifts of real estate in Los Angeles and California. I trained under the tutelage of the late Ed Landry of Music Peeler, who was the lead attorney on the Getty estate.
Wonderful. And then I see Anna Measles. Anna, do you want to say something? Anna? Okay, maybe she's not ready yet. We can come back to her. Dick Platkin, say hello.
I'm a retired LA city planner. After I retired, I taught planning classes at USC and CSUN, and now I write a weekly column on planning issues in LA for City Watch LA that anybody can sign up and get for free. And I'm a member of the Planning Alliance and UN4LA, which is United Neighborhoods for Los Angeles.
Wonderful. And then we have Marianne King. Marianne, would you like to say hello?
How'd you know my first name?
I just looked it up. No, of course I remember. Of course I remember. I write your name often enough, so.
Hi, I'm Marianne King. I'm a board member with the Chatsworth Neighborhood Council Land Use Committee.
Very good. And we have Gary. Say hello.
No, because you just called me.
Okay, good. Of course, I recognize your name from the Congress. Tell us something about yourself, just if you want to.
Yeah, well, my name is Gary Fordyce. I've been with the North Hills West Neighborhood Council since late 2013. And then I've also been a budget advocate for Region 2 for several years and recently reelected, and that's pretty much it.
Very good. Well, thank you for being here. Then we have Helene Schbach. Helene, you want to give us your minute and a half bio?
Hi, sorry. I have the same issue also. I have a 7 o'clock meeting. I'm with the Glassell Park Improvement Association. I help them with land use issues, and I'm on the Planning and Land Use Committee of the Glassell Park Neighborhood Council, and sort of been involved in community land use issues since I moved here in '99.
Well, that's fantastic. And then we have Philip.
Philip Armstrong, Rampart Village Neighborhood Council. Good to be here. And I had mentioned that I would like to get your input on the LA Housing Department's coordination with city planning and the city attorney's office on issuing covenants and easements for affordable housing units in projects that include a mix of income level units.
Very good. Thank you so much. Glenn just showed up. Glenn, how are you doing? The ID. But anyway, my name is Richard Larson. So I was head of production for John Parkinson Architects. And then, let's see, I was on the Lincoln Heights Neighborhood Council, Chair Emeritus for the Planning and Land Use Committee, twice elected. And then, let's see, started the LA Planning Alliance, this organization here, a couple of years ago. And then I'm secretary of the Los Angeles Congress. And I work with most of the folks here day in and day out on planning and land use issues. And basically the alliance is to facilitate neighborhood councils, planning and land use committees, and to talk and discuss about strategies that impact your specific community, seeing if we can join forces. This is today's agenda. On September 25th, which is a few Saturdays from now, we're going to have the Los Angeles Congress, which is hosting an event where we have workshops from neighborhood councils all over the city, and we have 6 parallel Zoom rooms, and all of these topics can be available to you if you go to the Congress website, and I'll post that information. This is a view of last year's results, and we put on this very same workshop last year, and we were the #1 attended workshop. And I just found out they were so gracious to give us another double slot this coming month. So it's a Saturday. We'll be on at 10 o'clock, and we'll be talking about this and broader subjects. And we'll have a panel of people. If you're all welcome to join in, I'll try to get that information out to everyone. So this was the workshop last year, and like I said, it was the most attended and very well received. One of our panelists is going to be Patrick Condon, author of this book, where he's looking at the dramatic increase in land value once affordable housing or properties that have been given a bonus, density bonuses for affordable housing, how they dramatically increase the value of the land and cause problems to adjoining properties, and the subject is displacement and some of the problems we're facing today in the city. So let's see, I wanted to just briefly introduce, here's a veterans workshop, October 28th, and contact me if you want more information on this. We got this from one of our Alliance fellows. And let's see here. Here's some of the speakers: Amy Perkins, tenant-based vouchers, and that subject. The first thing on the agenda tonight is the policies and procedures ordinance. So I put the document, the density structures, and the city's city planning's idea for how to address our housing issues. Here's another announcement. So the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, we have all these acronyms, and I try to put an acronym slot on the agenda. So DONE is the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. Most of us probably know that, but LAAN, the Los Angeles Alliance of Neighborhood Councils, which is an alliance of all the neighborhood councils, and they put together this survey. It's a very interesting survey. Basically, it's saying, how well do you think that that DONE is supporting your neighborhood council? Are they impacting free speech? There's a lot of interesting topics that they bring up in this questionnaire. The efficacy of their actions, and they've changed all the bylaws. And I don't know how you do that for 99 neighborhood councils where they're all different. Which it has to do with a topic very near and dear to Dick Platkin's heart. Dick, would you like to talk about this?
Sure. And then maybe afterwards, we can go look at your questions and I can give my personal answers to them. Well, I wrote, this was for City Watch, and if you're not subscribing to it, you simply go to the website, citywatchla.com, and you will have a sign-up sheet so you can have it sent directly to your email. The situation, the Wilshire Community Plan Area is one of 35 in LA, and it's very central and important. It's on Melrose in the north, Venice Boulevard in the south, Beverly Hills on the west, and probably, let's see, what is the street on the right? It's past Vermont. Maybe it's almost by Alvarado on the right. So it's a very big centrally located area that has the Purple Line subway and the Red Line subway going right through it. And the situation in this community plan area is not that different than any of the other 34 plan areas in the city. The effort to update all of these plans began when Gail Goldberg was the director of planning, and she was ousted when Antonio Villaraigosa was the mayor. That's almost 16 or 17 years ago. And she called it the new community plans. From her period to the present, only 7 of the 35 have been updated. And the city council, when it pushed back against Measure S, said every community plan has to be updated on a 6-year cycle, which means that those 7 are already due to be updated a second time. And the remainder are in different stages. 16 of these plans are in process, which means they've had a lot of public meetings. There's work on the text, there's work on the environmental impact report, but there's no known dates when all of this work will be completed, when there will be a final draft, when there will be a circulated environmental impact report, when it will go to the City Planning Commission, and when it will go to the City Council for adoption. This is unknown. So basically, after a 17-year period, only 7 of these plans have been properly updated. The other thing is, these are local plans, whereas most of the general plan is citywide, like transportation, housing, which is a recently adopted ordinance, public safety. There's 7 mandatory elements. And since 2016, every city has to have an environmental justice element, something related to climate change. And the city of LA hasn't even begun to do this, even though it is 6 years overdue to start. And there's not even any start date that's proposed. So what happens is, because these plans are out of date, when developers have really big projects, which you see all over the city, not just the Wilshire plan area, but just about every plan area, the developers go site by site, project by project. They could, in theory, build their buildings according to the codes, the zoning code and the planning code, in which case they wouldn't have to ask for any discretionary actions. But usually, to maximize profit, they want to have very large projects that often exceed the height or exceed the floor area ratio, or are not permitted some of the uses in it. So almost every large project is packaged with a zone change or a variance or a conditional use permit, all of which are called discretionary actions. They require the action of a zoning administrator or the director of city planning or the city council. They require a whole bunch of, there's 3 different types of these discretionary actions. The other thing about the discretionary actions is they come under the category of pay to play. So if you want to have a discretionary action approved, a smart developer will contribute to the campaign of an incumbent, sometimes the campaign of a challenger. They also give a lot of gifts to people. It's estimated that when Antonio Villaraigosa retired, I guess his annual salary was probably, I don't know, $250,000 as mayor. LAS, which is, I think, publication produced by KPCC, they estimated that he would need an annual salary of $750,000 to maintain the same lifestyle. So how do we explain the difference between $250,000 and $750,000? These are all the gifts. These were free trips, basketball tickets, probably free cars, all kinds of gifts are offered to the office holders, the elected officials, and sometimes directors of general managers of city departments. So they will bend the city laws in favor of the applicants. They make a lot of money. The applicants usually have to go through a lot of hoops, but they get their permits approved. And the case that's now at the Wilshire Boulevard, the Wilshire Community Plan area, is at the CBS site. The CBS site that many of you know is right at the corner of Beverly and Fairfax. It's a very large site. This is a map of the Wilshire Plan area. So you can see it's a very large area. This, I guess I don't, I do have the cursor. This is Melrose. This is, I think, Rosewood. This is Beverly Hills. This is Venice. And this, I think this is Vermont. So this is a few miles, maybe about a half a mile to the east of Vermont. You can see it's an extremely large area. Almost the entire corridor, all the way from the Westlake area through Beverly Hills, is either new or proposed apartment houses. These are often very luxurious. There's one over here called the Mirabelle, which is produced by it's proposed by Wally Knox III. It would be, I think, 42 stories high. It would be very expensive things. Over here is another project that's in abeyance right now. This is a Rick Caruso project that would be a high-rise luxury building built, I think, about 18 stories high with rents that start at about $8,000 and go up to 24, 40,000 for the penthouse things. So these are very expensive projects. And as I mentioned, they all require approval by various city decision-making bodies, whether it's the director of planning, the zoning administrator, or the city council. We're now in the predicament that the entire planning process is bogged down. None of these community plans are likely to be approved in the next few years. The 14 which remain, like the Wilshire Community Plan, it was supposed to start in 2019. It's already 2022. It'll soon be 2023. They don't even have a start date. The quickest they could possibly push these through by cutting every corner they could is a three years, which means the earliest that would happen is 2026, which is extremely unlikely. And the outcome is also very dubious because, as we know, if you followed planning issues in LA, you know that the Hollywood Community Plan was legally challenged and was dismissed and thrown out by Judge Alan Goodman, who said the plan, the text, the implementing ordinances, and the draft environmental impact report all need to be discarded. None of them are valid because the city basically lied and when they prepared these documents. So we can assume that the planning process will play little role in approving all of these projects that are underway, both the major public works projects like the subways, as well as all of the major private sector projects that are underway. So that's kind of an overview. Why don't I stop here? And if you want, I can answer questions, or I can go back to your questions that you posed, Richard, at the beginning. I'll let you guys. I prefer to do the questions first.
Yes, does anybody have any questions? This all comes into play, by the way, with the policies and procedures which we're talking about. That's why we're introducing what the what's on the table right now, or what is being taken off?
Well, just let me make a comment there. Because the plans are out of date, big developers, and there are big developments either proposed or on the works or under construction or recently completed, they have to ask for all of these discretionary actions. And they want to simplify that process as much as possible. So the procedures ordinance only affects these discretionary actions. If a project totally conforms to the building code and the zoning code, it doesn't have to require any special zoning waivers, and it wouldn't be affected by the planning or this new ordinance. Just to clarify it, there's maybe 300 cases per year that it would affect.
Oh, I see some hands up. Mary Ann, go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm blind over here.
Oh, no problem. So I was just thinking in my mind, last one is a rotten egg. So as far as the community plan updates go, I'm just thinking the last community plan in is a rotten egg, meaning they get all the excess density. It's just,
That's a good one.
All right. So, but putting that aside, I'm just thinking about the housing element. And so the housing element was approved recently. And my understanding is that the upzoning, I think they call it rezoning, but it's really upzoning. There's a deadline on that, and I believe it's October. And so I kind of get the sense that it has nothing to do with community plan updates anymore. They're just going to come in. They got the staff. They're going to come in and push this issue of upzoning to meet the RENA goals and our requirements. And so that is, I guess, my concern. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I do. The RHNA stands for Regional Housing. I forget exactly what the acronym is for, but this is the build out zoning potential. If you look at the actual environmental impact report for the general plan framework, which was prepared about 25 years ago, they examined the zoning build out. LA's current zoning build out is about 7 million people as opposed to 3.7. So you could nearly double, you could more than double, you could double the size of the city of LA based on existing ordinance. Then on top of that, every commercial zone allows a transit-oriented community upzone. So that would probably produce another 2 million people. So the ultimate zoning build out right now is probably around 9 million people. So if they were to do an honest RHNA calculation, they would say the city of LA already has so much zoning capacity, it doesn't need to have it. But the theory behind the housing element is that a lot of this upzoning will never be utilized by developers. So therefore we have to increase it even more. And the housing element has, I think, nearly 140 implementation programs, but only one really makes it to make a difference. One is to upzone when community plans are upzoned, and the other is to create even greater density bonuses, which are called transit-oriented community bonuses. You're absolutely right that at the pace that the community plans are being implemented, it's doubtful that any of these will be completed by the time the state has imposed its deadline, which I think they gave the city until spring of 2023 rather than October of 2022. So this means that developers, when they want to build these big buildings like the CBS project near my house, they will go project by project. They will ask for all of these discretionary actions, all of these zone changes and so forth, plan amendments, and they will do pay to play. They will give a lot of money to a lot of elected officials. They will give a lot of gifts to these people and maybe some public employees. And that's how they will get their permits. So they won't be able to get it by the housing element. They will get it case by case. So we will see a lot of new development in LA that will increase the cost of housing, which increases the number of people who are homeless, but it won't happen through the community plans. So I think Marianne is correct.
And
We'll still get to the same result, but it'll just be with a lot more politicians getting their cut.
thank you. I see Anna has a question.
Yeah, hi, Richard. Hi, Dick. And it's nice to hear from Mary Ann King. Been a long time. Okay, my question is, were the projects delayed because of the pandemic? And if that's the case, don't they have to submit new community plans with costs? Because everything has gone up in the last 2 or 3 years. And then shouldn't they change the dates of when they should be completed?
Some of you probably remember Measure S. It was soundly defeated 2-1, I think, in 2017. It was heavily funded by the developers, mostly big real estate companies. It would have required the city of LA in a 2-year period to update the general plan. And the last thing that the big developers wanted was to be subject to the general plan. So they successfully fought it tooth and nail. And they had the city council say, well, you don't need to vote for Measure S because we will require at least the community plan portion of the general plan to be updated in every 6 years. That was immediately forgotten, that action by the city council. And the content of Measure S, which was to have a rapid update, not just of the community plans, which is owned with the land use element, but everything else in the housing element. The only thing that's been updated since then is the housing element, and the implementation of the housing element requires the community plan updates. So that will not happen either. So in terms of deadlines, they don't mean anything. The city could, if it wanted to, say we will complete it by this date or that date. They said originally 17 years ago that each community plan would be updated on a 3-year cycle. So 3 years, 17, we should have had the community plans updated every community plan should have been updated a couple times. They would have done about 10 or 11 per year over a period of 17 years. I mean, that's 170 updates. So that's a lot of community plans that would be updated, but it doesn't mean anything. The planning department simply looks the other way. The city council, the Plum Committee, the city planning commission, all of these people simply ignore deadlines. They don't really care at all about planning, which is why we have a city that is rapidly in free fall in terms of its public infrastructure.
Thank you, Dick.
Marianne?
I think Ron's next.
Oh,
Okay, thanks. Hi, Dick. I'm trying to understand the downtown community plan update, which has not gone before city council. The term new zoning code has come up. And am I correct in thinking that each community plan area could end up with its own zoning code, which would differ from the other 34?
This was the original plan. They wanted to create what was called form-based zoning. They wanted the original plan, which was, I think, at least 10 years ago. It's never been completed. Would have changed the zoning code. And form-based zoning means you regulate the external shell, the building envelope, but you are much more liberal as to the use within it. As long as you conform to the outside parameters, you can do what almost any use that you want on the inside. None of these have gone through, as far as I know. Maybe I'm trying to think what the last community plan that was updated. I'm not sure, maybe, I'm not sure what the last one is. It was one of the 7. Maybe South Los Angeles and Southeast Los Angeles, I think were completed a few years ago.
They did release some preliminary information on the downtown community plan, and when
Yeah, but that's the preparation phase. These things go in 3, they're supposed to go in 3 phases. The first phase is preparation, all these community outreach meetings, all the research, draft environmental impact reports, draft text, workshops, and then they have a final text that goes to the City Planning Commission, a zoning implementation ordinance, which goes to the City Planning Commission, final draft and a final environmental impact report. There's a lot of steps that have to go through after you prepare them till you actually adopt them. And the final step is when the City Council adopts the plan text, it adopts it certifies the environmental impact report, it adopts all the implementation ordinances. And I don't think any of these plans that are in preparation, they have an announced adoption date. So we don't know when they'll be completed and when the City Council will actually take an action on them, including the downtown.
And one of the things that was supposed to be synchronized was the Southern California Association of Governments have projections for 2040, is it? 2045, something like that. And if you look at what they're basically doing is they want to make sure that the jobs and the location where people are residing, that the IO makes sense. And SCAG gives these projections on what the population will be in a certain period of time, in the future. And we did the math on that, and it looks like what they're projecting for downtown would require something like 17, I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, so I don't want to exaggerate, but it was a huge area of new residential demand that was going to be located downtown to accommodate these folks. And
well, I'll have a comment on that.
Go ahead, Dick.
There's a lot of rationales that go for what developers want. Developers want easy permits. They don't like to pay all this pay to play. They don't want to have to apply for all these zone changes and plan amendments and so forth. They just want to get their projects permitted, and they'll come up with any possible justification for it. So that's why we hear there's a housing shortage. To deal with homelessness, we have to build lots of new housing. Of course, we know this. We can look at any neighborhood with a lot of new housing, and you see homelessness is going up. This is the case in the West Valley and Warner Center. It's the case in Hollywood. It's the case in Koreatown, and it's the case in downtown LA. The locations of new expensive housing are also the locations of the most homeless encampments. And this is because new housing is expensive. It's built by the private sector. They build it to make a return on investment. They expect an annual return of 15 to 20%, which is a lot more than you could get in the bank, which is what, 1/10 of 1%. So they don't have the slightest problem getting financing. So we can go on about this, but that's the long and short of.
Marianne, you had a question?
Oh, I want to say hi to Anna. Anna, good to hear your voice. And I might be getting a little off subject, so I apologize, but just trying to take everything in. I thought downtown was the pilot for the new zoning, and so that was implemented, and I'm just not sure what other community plan update has adopted the new zoning, but that's how it goes step by step. I just wanted to, I guess, share, something recently in the news about Newsom, providing funding for Glendale, Burbank, and I think Pasadena to provide low-income housing or affordable housing. And I find this very, ironic, because those certain areas have the transit-oriented rich areas. I mean, so, you know, I talked about AB 2097 last time we met, and I think it's been amended. So actually the requirement is a little bit more set aside, 20% affordable. And you know, which is good. I think that that's the right way to go. But the fact, I guess the you know, it's already a situation that exists. There's a lot of development that's taken place, and it's not affordable housing along, you know, the Gold Line and so forth. So now they're you know, getting state funding, and I just find that wrong. I you know, I mean, why not you know, have policies that require it instead of asking or having the state give you the money to provide the affordable housing. Anyways, just something that kind of bothers me.
Besides all the mobility that Department of City Planning provides to development, they're using, yes, you're right, they're using funds from the California Treasury, and they're also locally they have tax exempt bonds, and they have funds that are available to build low cost housing. But what happens is these are one of these is going up a block from here in Lincoln Heights, and that's not a market rate development. The units going for that much money here are luxury. Those units are considered luxury housing to anybody around here. And then the other odd thing is there's 3 buildings, and they're putting all the low cost in one, and it has a separate entrance. There's a lot of...
They call that a pour door.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that's all about. You know, the idea behind, one of the ideas, I don't know, I may be way off here, about affordable housing was you can make these available in every community in Los Angeles and give people applying for affordable housing the benefit of the community that they're in. Excuse me. And you know, it could be better for education. It could be an improvement in any number of ways that we've seen. But most of these TOCs are going up in Mexican American communities, and it's causing people displacement because these are so-called market rate, but they're not. And you know, they also take up all the local parking. Excuse me. So we had in Hollywood United had a TOC go up, and almost immediately everybody was complaining about they can't park anywhere anymore, and they asked me, what can I do about it? Well, that's another problem besides the one that we're, you know, on the front page is really the policies and procedures and the housing element and the community plans being lacking. I had one question. I don't want to drift too far off the topic, but when the community plans were conceived, there was the framework. And what I enjoyed about the framework was that it was a little bit, you know, fuzzy language, and it was like a catch basin where you could throw all the loose stuff. And basically they had things like, well, there should be certain amenities near transportation and within communities and so forth. Now, where has that gone to? Is that in this new policy and procedures ordinance? Is it still in the community plans?
No, the policies and procedures ordinance only deals with these discretionary actions. It doesn't impose any requirements on any community to upgrade infrastructure. It doesn't deal with planning issues. It's a zone. It really streamlines requests for zoning waivers. That's why it deals with the procedures that are involved for all of these different types of discretionary actions. These are about 3% of all of the cases that go to building and safety. 97% of the cases that go to building and safety can be built by right. That is, they conform to the code. So the procedures ordinance deals with the 3% that cannot be built by right. So we should keep that. But I think you make a good point about all of these amenities. Right now, the Metro is building mass transit everywhere. And for mass transit to work, you do need public amenities. You have to have tree planting. You have to upgrade and widen the sidewalks. You need to have buffered bike lanes, buffered scooter lanes. You need to have parking. You need to have parklets. You need to have interfaces at all of the stations. Metro is not including any of these. If you go to the oldest subway, the oldest mass transit lines, like the Blue Line that connects the downtown to Long Beach, it doesn't exist. If you go to the Gold Line, most of these stations do not have any of these upgrades. The one near my house, the Purple Line, which is a subway, costs $1 billion a mile to build a subway on Wilshire Boulevard. Metro has prepared first last mile plans, but they have not paid for the implementation. So where I live, there is a plan, but the city of LA won't implement the plan, and Metro won't add a couple $1 million. I think it's $5 million per mile to implement the plan. So there's no first last mile public improvements. In my neighborhood, there are no bike lanes, there's no tree planting, there's no restructuring, there's no rebuilding of sidewalks, there's no bus rapid transit lanes, there's no interfaces for pedestrians, for bicycles, for scooters, for buses, for cars, for any other private shuttles to go to the new subway stations. It doesn't exist. You get there on your own. There's no wayfaring signs. There's nothing. So this is a great deficiency, but this is mostly because of Metro not funding it. And it's also because the city of LA could care less about these public amenities. They're interested in creating opportunities for real estate development. That's probably why we have a lot of mass transit. It creates real estate opportunities.
I saw a very good example of that on La Cienega at the end of the what's the Wilshire line? That's
the Purple Line on
Purple Line.
La Cienega, and Wilshire is the phase 2 of the Purple Line extension that goes through Beverly Hills.
At the La Cienega stop, there's a huge real estate development there, and there's more being planned. They're enormous, and they're basically geared around the idea that they get this density bonus because they're a TOC, but really, they that's a part of town that's not exactly easy to get to. The further you get out that way, you're in between freeways, and what I'm getting at is a lot of people are keeping their cars, and they're just they're not going to be giving up their cars just because they're living in a TOC development.
But there is a difference. Most at that point of the Purple Line that goes through Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills is paying out of its city budget for a lot of the public improvements that Metro will not pay for in the city of Los Angeles.
Oh my
so there is a qualitative difference. Beverly Hills is doing a much better job of planning these public amenities, and Beverly Hills is not changing any of its zoning or any of its plan designations in the process.
Would Beverly Hills be building garages for these TOCs so that people that have 2 or 3 cars have a place to park their car near a TOC?
That I don't know, but I can talk about one luxury condo building that's at the intersection of Western and Wilshire, which is now the terminus of the Purple Line. I have a friend who lives there.
Western and Wilshire, yeah.
He said it's a large, high-rise residential structure right at the corner. It's opposite the Wiltern Theater. If you know.
Yeah, I've been in that building. There's a pool, nice pool there, and
that's up on the top.
And it's right across the street from the AIA.
The
American Institute of Architects.
There are nearly 200 condos in that building. My friend and his wife, my friend is from New York originally. He's used to taking the subway. He and his wife use the subway all the time. He said he thinks he's the only person in this building that is literally probably a minute out from the subway stop. You just walk out the front door of his building and you walk right into the Purple Line subway. You don't have to even cross the street. He said everyone else drives. They usually have like 2 luxury cars for everyone in that condo structure. He says most people have never even been in the subway or all the buses that go by that corner.
No, that was built in the around 2006 or so, that
That
building.
would make sense. Yeah.
And that's not a TOC though, is it? I don't
No,
think.
but the problem with the TOC buildings is there's no inspection or there's no enforcement. No one from the city ever goes out to a TOC project to confirm that the low-income units exist and that they are occupied by vetted low-income tenants. There's no way for a landlord in LA to confirm that a prospective tenant qualifies for a low-income unit. And there's no registry of the tenants that the city of LA maintains. And there's no accurate registry of the available units that the city of LA maintains. So there's a big fallacy for the TOC. And I just want to make one more point, then I'll be quiet. The need for low-income housing in LA is enormous. The only public housing program that remains is called Section 8. The LA Times reported that it takes about 13 years to get on the list for Section 8 housing. Only 400 people per year manage to get Section 8 housing. Yeah. And the line is 600,000 people long. When they announce it, 600,000 people said they would like to get Section 8 housing. So if TOC housing and density bonus housing, inclusionary zoning, if we could plug all the holes and make them work, then since they have so many defects, maybe they would provide 10 or 20,000 low-income units that low-income people would find a place to live. But that still leaves an enormous gap of at least 550,000 units or 500,000 units. Now, in the past, from the 1930s to the 1970s, this gap was met by public housing. And there still are 2 million people who live in public housing. But because public housing has been canceled beginning with the Nixon administration, so that's about 50 years ago, there's virtually no more public housing except Section 8. And that's the reason why there's so much homeless people. There's all of the housing that's available is expensive. It's way above the income levels of most people, and they end up being homeless because they can't. It's not a housing shortage, it's a money shortage. That's the reason why we have homelessness. And it isn't just in LA, it's all over the country, especially in the West Coast of the United States.
Thank you, Dick. I see Anna has her hand up. Anna.
Well, Dick, if you want to see a road that describes what you were talking about, come to the Valley. Reseda Boulevard in Northridge and Reseda has all those amenities you were talking about. My other question is, why did
amenities?
Pardon me?
But it doesn't have mass transit. Reseda Boulevard is not a transit.
Well, they can't do everything. What can I say? The city never does everything 100%. My other question is, why did Metro change all the lines from color to number? I'm sorry, color to letters.
I don't know.
The orange line is now G.
I haven't heard that.
I have no idea why they made that change.
Is that recent?
Yes, within the last few months.
But I have a question about Reseda Boulevard. I mean, I know the street pretty well. It's not a very attractive street, but there is, I think, near Cal State Northridge, some bike lanes. But are there other amenities on Reseda Boulevard?
Well, they did put a dedicated bike lanes, but they're also.
But that's about a mile south of Season, then it disappears.
No, it comes down to Reseda. I mean, it comes down to Victory, but they take over some of the traffic. So a lot of the merchants.
From Victory to Ventura Boulevard is about a 5 or 6 mile stretch. So that's a pretty long stretch.
a lot of the merchants are not happy because it affects their parking in the front of their establishment.
I believe that.
And then they put in new stations, new bus stations for the buses. So not everybody's happy. I knew there were community meetings regarding that, but you know, people don't always look at the photos. Thank you.
There was, getting back to the policies and procedures thing, this was a letter that came out just a few weeks ago on the policies and procedures. And here's something that they've kindly, they're going to do this great thing. They're going to have a transition team. Okay, and that sounds good, right? A transition team of staff across multiple divisions of the department and to roll out the new ordinance. And then they go on to say here that the first phase, they're going to train this transition team in 2 phases. The first one will be provided after the city council's final adoption vote. And then they're going to have a second phase, two months preceding the adoption of the ordinance. And
Richard, could you take off the agenda and just share that page? Because we can't read it at all. It's all blurred.
you can't see it. Can anybody else see that?
I can see it fine.
Well, I can't see it because half of it is the agenda on my screen. I don't have any way to make it bigger.
Well, that's odd. The only thing I'm sharing is the, here's the front, do you see that's the front page of the letter?
Oh, wait a minute. No, I got it. I finally got it because your agenda left.
Okay.
Now you're doing the survey. Oh, here it is. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So this is the first page of the letter. And then this was the one where they announced there's going to be a transition team. And then this is the one where they describe what the transition team of the policies and procedures ordinance that we've been talking about, that they're going to have 2 phases. One will be to train their team after the city adopts the final vote, and then once it's voted, of course, there'll be the operational date of the ordinance, and then 2 months preceding that, they're going to go into the second phase of training. And I don't see how this is going to work at all, because it's again of getting everything backwards. If we're concerned about what's happening on the development end of things, this is not going to help either. And one of the things that were on the one of the issues that was on the survey, which by the way, that survey hasn't been distributed publicly, and the group that well, I created that survey, but I have to ask the group if they would mind if we can open it up to the Planning Alliance and see how many responses we can get on that. But one of the issues was that, well, you know, neighborhood councils are supposed to weigh in on entitlements, and their recommendations even now aren't really well weighted. And then a lot of times we have to have appeals, and they go to the city planning commission, and that's not a favorable environment. And it's just with this on top of it, I just wonder what the new mayor is going to be able to do to put all this straight.
Well, let me chime in.
Go ahead.
The emphasis on devoting all of this staff to the policy and procedures ordinance. It's like 5,000 pages, I think, one version of it. This is really an alternative to updating the community plans. If you update the community plans, you update the zoning, and you will probably have much less need for discretionary actions. The planning department basically has decided not to maintain old plans and force all the developers to apply for all of these discretionary actions. Then they want to streamline the application process of issuing these discretionary approvals. That's what this is about.
Well, how the
It has
neighborhood
nothing to do with the community plans. This is done as an alternative to the community plans and the general plan.
Okay, fine, but let's say they're green lighting all kinds of stuff downtown.
Well, this is only the 3% of the cases that are called major projects that require multiple zone changes and plan amendments and so forth.
Even
If
so,
you build according to the code, the policy and procedures ordinance is irrelevant. You never get to the planning department. You go
Well-
straight to building and safety, and that's it.
Oh, well, I see. So in other words, those projects don't even pass the neighborhood councils.
No, most projects in the city of LA only go to building and safety. The only ones
Well,
that go to a neighborhood council are the ones that require multiple
change.
approvals,
Right.
changes to the zoning code,
right,
waivers of the zoning code.
Huh.
The
Well,
planning department has tried to keep the whole planning process submerged in the dark. And they tell people, well, really, it's your concern ought to be the major projects that require all of these special approvals. But that's only a tiny fraction of cases. And they keep people focused on new construction so they don't think about the water mains, the electric mains, telecommunications, parks, libraries, condition of streets, ADA curb cuts, all of the infrastructure categories in the city of LA are kept out of view because neighborhood councils only focus on those tiny percentage of projects that are really big and require special waivers from the city planning department or the city council. It's a scam. It's a kind of a scam to keep people's attention away from the major planning issues in LA.
yeah,
And I'm speaking of someone who worked in the planning department for 20 years.
yeah. I was wondering. I was kind of going to bring that up. A lot of times we're very critical of the Department of City Planning, and I was going to mention that at the workshop I had invited Jane Choi and Faisal Roble. Two of the, well, is Faisal a city planner?
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, that's what
I have a lot of respect for Faisal.
I've thought that too. And I've met with Jane and I thought she was a reasonable person and I could be fairly brusque about our community design overlay, which is another topic. And she seemed to respond well. And basically, I invited both of them to the workshop that we're hosting in a few weeks. And last year, one of the city people jumped out of the bushes and said, "Oh no, you can't do that." And I don't know why. I don't know why we scared them so badly. But I think that I had emails from both of them that they were very interested in participating. So they weren't the ones not willing to be there. They certainly were. In our workshop last year that had such a great attendance. And
I think the reason is that plan check, which is supposed to be separate and represent all the planning committees of the neighborhood councils, and the neighborhood congress, which ought to be autonomous and come from the bottoms up. The city hall, especially the planning department, tries to control it to keep people focused on these big projects and keep their attention off of other planning categories like climate change, equity,
land trust,
infrastructure, urban forests.
Oh yeah, the forest. Well,
they don't want people to think about all of these things that are in the process of degrading rapidly in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and affordability just falls by
affordability. Housing is usually blamed for a lack of housing. So if we build more housing, which means more luxury housing, we'll solve the housing problem, which is intuitively nonsense. You can see it doesn't work. We have a building boom in LA and we have an increase in homelessness in LA. So the facts are right in front of everybody's eyes.
Anyway, we're getting close to well, we're over an hour at this point. I'm thinking that we didn't get to everything on the agenda. We wanted to talk about the land trusts and inclusionary zoning and more affordability. And then this is our website, by the way. We have a description and a mission, and then we have this on the topics page. There's all kinds of things. We talk about high-speed rail. We talk about a lot of the things that people don't realize is there's a multitude of projects that are coming along from either big development or the Bureau of Engineering, and a lot of cross overlapping that affects transportation and the infrastructure that Dick was just talking about. And we have papers on that and under topics. And then under the media page is all the past meetings. I think this is only the 5th meeting that we have uploaded. Comments? Oh, Marianne, go ahead. Or is that your name?
Well, I do. I'm just thinking about what Dick said with the percentage of discretionary projects, such a small percentage. If that's true, the 3%. I think I heard 11% the other day at a Plum City Council meeting. So maybe, I think the climate change is, I'm sorry to say, our elected officials that really don't want to deal with the general public anymore. And I got that sentiment from the last Plum committee meeting where certain council members said, some people say, democracy is just like NIMBY is equal to NIMBYism. And I think the sentiment was he agrees. And I was really disturbed by that very much. So much so that I wanted to write like an editorial to the LA Times, like, hey, this is enough already. So what happened at that Plum committee meeting is this one person who was appealing, he appealed like 2 cases, and he was just like the enemy. The enemy is like, oh, it's just frivolous, frivolous that you're, what do you call it? You're displacing low income, affordable housing with these big projects that only set aside, 10% of affordable housing unit. How dare you? How dare you appeal this case? And I felt, I don't know, it was a very heartfelt, I felt so sad for that person, and I understood his passion and what he was upset about, and no one had the decency to at least acknowledge that. He was treated like he was dirt. And I guess long story short, Dick and Richard, is so if this is kind of like coming to the end of democracy as we know it in the city of Los Angeles when it comes to planning, what's our next step as neighborhood councils? What can we do as groups that still care? If we can't opine on projects, where do we go next? Do we just hone in on bigger, more comprehensive issues? I'm just something to think about, because the case by case, project by project is brutal, and the community is not getting any airplay on that.
We had the thank you, Marianne. We had the Carter. What was Judge Carter? His decision. Remember that, Dick?
Yeah, David Carter. That's in the downtown.
Yeah, that was stunning. So that's one thing I haven't heard much about yet. And so some of the other.
I can offer a quick answer to what Marianne said. You're right. When neighborhood councils are forced to go case by case, they seldom have the resources to keep track of all the projects just in their own area. But there still is the option of the lawsuits. They're expensive, but they're not a lot, but there's enough good lawyers around who are willing to work with community groups. That's an option. Then you need to look at the tenants union. The tenants union doesn't use lawsuits. They use direct action, where they use demonstrations and stuff to force the city's hand by public action. So I think you need to go look at that group as an example of alternatives to these public hearings. The LA Tenants Union.
Yes. Well, there's more suggestions. We'll have to. Maybe we should just start off with that next time. Philip, go ahead.
Yes, hi. I had messaged you, Richard, before the meeting about on the issue of transit-oriented communities and how we keep track of those affordable units that, the 10% that they agree to build. And the answer that we got from LAHD when they came to our neighborhood council to talk about their, the affordable housing registry is, so the answer they gave us was that, and this is from Britannia Murillo, who's the LAHD occupancy and monitoring unit manager. So she said that there's, so in other words, the city attorney's office gets notified by city planning when there's these units. And then the city attorney works with LAHD to execute land use covenants to create easements on the title of the property for the affordable units. So in other words, on each of these units, the 10%, there's a land use, there's a covenant that requires them to be affordable for the number of years. And then I think it's, I don't remember offhand, but I think they told us this LAHD that actually screens the tenants to make sure that they they fit the affordability criteria. But based on this information, our neighborhood council contacted the city attorney, and so the city attorney who does this for all the covenanted units is Mai Cheng, and he said that he just reviews their draft covenants and then handles non-compliant projects. But in other words, it's actually LHD that does this and has all the information. And so he referred us back to them. And the questions that we were asking, and the idea of me bringing this up is I wanted to find out if this group has any other questions. So the questions we asked them was, what's the status of their efforts to execute these land use covenants and create easements on the title of the property? Meaning, is there a backlog? Are they up to date on all of these, creating all these covenants on these affordable units? So that's the first question. The second question is, how many have these land use covenant, what's the number of units for which these covenants and easements have been completed? So that's question number 2. And then the third question is whether those units and projects are, where these covenants and easements have been completed are identified in a city database. And so those are our 3 questions. And when we asked those questions, they said, we'll get back to you in 3 to 4 weeks. And that's fine. But if they're going to take that long, then, and, make this into a big project, I would like to know if anyone else has any questions that we could include so that in 3 to 4 weeks, we get, all the answers that we need and not just, the ones that I thought up and not what anybody else wants to know. And so if you want to take a moment and give me any other questions, that would be great.
Ron's shaking. I haven't answered that, but Ron, did you want to say something?
My only comment would be, couldn't a title company help us get copies of what's in the county record for these properties? I mean, I have a contact at First American Title who's a senior manager. I think she can give me a clue as to whether we could bypass some of these city departments that may not be responsive.
So it's too
bad. No, but the city department told us that they would give us the information, but they just said it was going to take 3 to 4 weeks. So I'm just asking, do you have a specific question that you would like us to include? And I can CC you when I send them the message.
Yes.
I'll put my email in the chat room, but I've had mixed results getting the city to be forthcoming with public records.
Okay, and I did put in the chat the presentation that they gave when they came to our meeting back in April. So if that might give you some idea of what kind of information they gave us. What I was talking about was you were saying the registry. And so they came and gave us a briefing on where they are in this registry. And they recently changed it from a private database to a public database. And they're migrating information in from the county's database. But the units and TOCs were not in there at the time when they gave us this presentation. They were, something that was going to happen over the next year. So you cannot go into that database and find units in mixed income developments. So they're not there. And you can go in there and you can look, and they're not there. But in other words, so at the same time, we asked them, well, how do you ensure, as we were saying here, that there's accountability for all these units, which I think someone was saying a little while ago, that nobody goes out and inspects. Well, if they're if they have covenants and they're in a database, then nobody needs to go out there and inspect, because they have, tab on them because they're screening the tenants and so forth. And so, in understanding how they're implementing these covenants, I came up with 3 questions. And my question to this group is whether you have any other questions.
Yeah, it's really hard to see a community in so need of answers on affordable housing and evictions and so forth, and then have the opportunity there to ask the very people that they would have a hard time finding on the telephone, including the director of HCID, by the way. And half the people there were trying to find out about how to evict folks. So,
I apologize. I didn't get to listen to you, Philip, your whole discussion there. So I might not be on point here, but I will just say that I feel that there is no way to monitor, and there's no transparency when it comes to affordable set-asides. So if that's what you're talking about, I totally agree. I would do things like I would know of this density bonus or TOC project and Van Nuys, and I'd see the building be built and the phone number out there, and I call. I say, yeah, how much, for like a 1-bedroom, and they'd say, oh, 2,400 or whatever. I said, do you have any affordable units? Well, not right now. And so they would blow me off. And so my gut feel is there's a whole lot of hot air going on there. And yeah, I'd be very interested in having a more legitimate way to ensure that these units are going, affordable units are going to the people that deserve them. And and so whatever, I would love to help with that as well. So I'll put my email in the chat, because I just I know that the housing department is working on something. So, and I'll look at your housing registry. But I just want to really hone in on this, because for the very few set-asides that are done right now, I just don't feel like they're going to the people that need them. And there's no one overlooking that. And I just, I can only be like one person, one watchdog, but I think it takes a village, honestly, to keep these projects honest, and I'd like to report them. If I make a phone call and someone blows me off because I'm looking for an affordable set-aside, and they, oh, not right now, it's like, yeah, I should be able to call the housing department and say, what's going on here? But I only know because I know the projects, but your average Joe out there isn't going to know. And that's the problem.
Do you mind if I respond to that?
Yeah. No, I don't.
Okay. So it took us from like July of 2021 until April of 2022 to get LAHD to come, because they kept saying, yeah, we'll come, but then they wouldn't come. And so they finally came. And so this is the presentation that the recording that I just put in the chat is what they actually told us. And they, in other words, in this data right now, if you go, at least back in April, if you went into this database, you would not be able to find any units in TOC projects in there. But they were telling us that over the course of the year, they will be in there. And so once they're in there, potentially they can put a filter in there that would just produce, the units that are actually in mixed income projects. But in the course of that presentation, I asked them, it's like, how do you ensure that all of these units get rented as affordable? And they said that the city planning office, when they do these TLC projects, when they approve these TLC projects, they notify the city attorney to, with the names and so forth of the projects and the units. And then the city attorney's office creates covenants and easements to ensure that those units are affordable. So that means that the landlord, the developer or the real estate management company cannot rent these units to someone who's not affordable, who doesn't meet the characteristics of an affordable household. And also that, if I remember correctly, I have this written down, but if I remember correctly, LEHD actually screens all the tenants for those apartments to make sure that they actually meet the income criteria. But in going back to them and asking them, what's the status of executing all these covenants and easements, they didn't have a ready answer. And they said, we need 3 to 4 weeks to do a study for you of this. And so that's why I wanted to come to this group and say, are there other questions that you would have that we could ask them all at once, rather than, a question here, a question there, and get answers all together? Because I think you have a better chance of getting them all together than you do if you, ask them in multiple iterations. And so that's kind of the question that I was posing today. Right, and that's one of the questions that was asked during the presentation. So it's on the recording that they said, thus and so, that how they keep track of them.
Okay, so we have that, and I see Ron has his hand up. Ron, did you?
Yeah, I just would like to say, I think what Philip is trying to do is very, very important. I mean, I began my organizing career in San Francisco, which is a whole different ballgame.
Oh.
But the level of public involvement is so low in LA that if we begin to make these types of requests, I think we might be surprised at the impact we could have.
All right. Well, we'll put it on the front page, and we'll have a report on that at the next meeting.
I would just like to say that the process that you're talking about and the process that I'm talking about may be the same process, because I don't know what, in other words, at what level they do the covenant. So in other words, it may be one covenant for each project. I don't know exactly how they do it, but I know that they told me that they do covenants for all the affordable units.
The city has to have some way of, the mitigated negative declarations have to do with the conditions with each property, which is something to do with the title. And it has something to do with the conditions in the neighborhood as far as like runoff and graffiti and all that kind of stuff. All of that stuff is covered. Like, is this near a freeway? Okay, you need MERV 11 filters. Is it this or that? All of that specificity about each individual property in Los Angeles is covered in an entitlement under a zoning administrator's declaration, which includes the negative declaration mitigation, which covers the fines and the prison terms and everything, including the covenant. And So we'll sort this out, Philip. You and I will be communicating on that, and
Hey, Richard, can
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but a lot of these projects are categorical exemptions, okay? There's no M&D, there's no ND, it's a categorical exemption. There's no impact. You're talking about is it's a clearance condition on the building and safety permit. It's not in the M&D. I just want to that's most of these projects, that's where they're going.
I realize you'd probably be the person who would know that.
I do.
But
I would just say that there's a clearance condition requirement on building and safety permits for projects, and if there's any affordable housing set aside, there's a clearance for the I believe for LA Housing Department. So that is, I think that is where things get registered, and at the LA Housing Department.
Right.
And then I believe that when the permit is issued, it becomes a public record at the county assessor's office as well.
Right.
And I just don't know what it looks like. So but I just wanted to say most of these projects are categorical exemptions.
And that's where there'd be Quimby fees as well, right?
Excuse me?
And that's where there would be Quimby fees.
Yeah. On the clearance, on the building and safety clearance conditions.
All right.
Yep.
Well, we need to discuss that a little bit more.
Yeah, I would say let's pay more attention to these kind of projects, categorical exemptions, and what they look like as far as the condition clearance goes. And I think, I mean, I'd be glad to help with that, but I do believe I haven't really followed this technically.
Well, how
but
do
I
you?
Believe,
How do you follow it? Because if these are CEs, nobody knows about them.
Well, yes. I mean, you can.
You'd have to hang out at zoning bureau on the 6th floor. You'd have to have lunch over there every day, and know people. I mean, actually, that's one way to find out what's going on too. But across the street at the fire department building, they've got an outdoor food court, and I would just hang out there all the time.
Oh, you're funny. Anyways, yes, if I can help with that, I would like to. I'm kind of interested in how this is really monitored. So I think it's a very good question and a good focus.
Okay, let's get going on that. All right, so I think I'm going to call the meeting. I want to thank you very much, everyone, for being here tonight. And we had a very exciting conversation about what the heck is wrong with our city, and sometimes it seems like it's an unbelievable list of to-dos. And we're going to have a new mayor here pretty soon, and maybe some of these problems will be solved. I don't know. Maybe they'll get worse. But we'll be here, and we'll be combining forces. And if you find people in other neighborhood councils that have an interest in planning and how to look for help with their planning and land use committees and so forth, please ask them to attend our meetings and find out more what's going on in their community. So with that, I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you very much for everybody for being here, and we'll see you next time. And if I hope to see you at the workshop, if the notice should have gone out, I'll probably send out one too anyway. So for the Los Angeles Congress on September 25th, Saturday, it'll be starting at 8 a.m. probably with the mayor at 9, and I think Raquel Beltran's going to give a little presentation. But it's a fantastic assembly of workshops on all kinds of different topics that are very vital to the neighborhood council system. So with that, thank you very much.